Hello, I'm Brenda Schivito, and this is You Are Not Alone, the show for news, tips, and stories of hope for those struggling with the disease of addiction. On today's show, we will highlight the first ever community overdose reversal training event being hosted by the Radnor Board of Health. More on that a bit later. But today, my guest, Kiki Karayannis, has a long list of credits to her name. Besides being a long-term resident of Radnor Township and the mother of 4 children, she has held many community volunteer positions. She has served in her church as a spiritual youth director, where she has also taught Sunday school. Kiki has chaired the Radnor High School Drug and Alcohol Task Force and the Radnor Middle School Discipline and Bully Task Force. She is a registered nurse and for the past 10 years has been a school nurse in different capacities for the Radnor School District, as well as many other public and private schools in the area. In November of 2019, she founded the nonprofit organization, the Michael Karayannis Waves to Wellness Foundation, motivated by the passing of her youngest child earlier that year. In 2020, she was appointed as the first nurse to serve on the Radnor Board of Health, a position she holds with high esteem and passion. She's here today to discuss the upcoming overdose reversal training, her concerns of how illegal substances are affecting not only our community, but also how the disease of addiction personally impacted her and her family. Kiki, I am delighted to welcome you to You Are Not Alone. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you, Brenda. It's my pleasure.
We have so much to talk about, and we'll get to it right away. So tell me, just in a few sentences, a few words, what led you into that nursing profession all those years ago?
I wanted to help people in their healing process, but more importantly, in educating them to lead a healthy lifestyle with long-term wellness. Mm-hmm. That's really, you know, more of a holistic approach.
Oh, so that was your main crux and motivation to get into nursing.
Yes.
Fabulous. And the volunteer posts that you've held in the past, can you tell us a little bit about those, the high school and the middle school positions you've had?
Sure. It's been a little while now. The middle school has been probably 20 years ago now. This was when my children were in school, and I was volunteering in school, and you know, I did observe some behaviors, and this was not in the classroom, of course. This was frequently happening during transition and a lot of commotion, where there were, you know, less than friendly behaviors happening at that time. So I initiated this task force, and we did some work with this through surveys, and it happened to be that the teaching staff agreed with the need to implement something. So that was the impetus for having people monitoring. You know, there was monitoring during that time, during transition.
So it was more, there was a need to kind of temper things during locker time transition from one class to another.
Exactly.
Things were going on, scuffles were occurring, and people needed to understand. And I'm sure understand, you know, the dangers of bullying, and I'm sure that those needs were fulfilled with this task force, would you say?
Yeah, I would say that there was improvement, definitely.
Educate the kids. And then, so then at the high school level, you were involved in the drug
and alcohol task force. Yes, and again, that was my, I guess that was just my nursing and my mothering combined in the teaching and prevention and the education of the effects, you know, the negative and the lifelong effects of drug and alcohol use, and how that, that even then it was in my mind as a disease process that was not always something that was readily turned off by some people.
Right. Right. So there was teachings about that at the high school level.
Right.
And that was the objective of the task force at the time. Do you feel as though today they still implement programs over there at Radnor High School?
Yes, they do. I know they do in the health department, during health classes.
Right. So there's something in place there for the prevention of drug and alcohol. There's teachings there, which we know is so vitally important.
It is. It is. And I think, the transition between the classroom teaching and the actual happening and the social skills required in those settings, that's where things kind of get complicated and fall apart.
Too, right, with the high school and the friends. And
yes, peer pressure. Peer pressure is more
complicated.
Yeah, it's really more powerful than we realize.
So, talk a little bit about, you have 4 children.
I have 4 children.
And discuss, if you care to, in whatever length you want to, what happened to your son? What happened to your son, Michael?
So Michael was a student athlete, and he was in the band. He was a student. He was your Radnor guy, basically. Very friendly, outgoing, musically gifted from a very young age, from the age of 2 and 3.
Right.
So that was sort of his, I think, therapy and outlet. Even as a young child, he would gravitate to the piano when there was, bickering among siblings, typical things.
Right.
All of a sudden, we would hear the piano, and that was
calming him.
Really very, very profound, and it was something that was, I guess, one of the, like a music therapy that he was implementing on his own.
Right. He could escape the chaotic sibling rivalry, disputes and whatever, and just go play.
Right. That definitely brought him joy.
Good. Hey, whatever it takes, right?
Right. Yeah. Formed a band of his own. And it was, as I said, in the school band and played multiple instruments, by ear, pretty much, and then by, music, of course, in the school setting.
And then he progressed on, graduated from Radnor High School. He graduated from Radnor,
and then he graduated from Westchester. He was at Pitt, transferred out back. My daughter was also out there. She had some complications due to Lyme disease that necessitated her leaving the Pittsburgh area so she could have her medication and treatments more locally here. And he was out there at the time and made the decision to transfer back closer to home. And so he wound up at graduating Westchester in his pre-physical therapy program with, honors, summa cum laude. And then he went on. He was pursuing his clinical doctorate as a physical therapist. It's a DPT program, Doctor of Physical Therapy now at Widener. And
did he complete that program?
He unfortunately was in the process of it when he passed away, so he was not able to complete that.
So what happened with Michael, with his passing? What happened?
Michael died of a substance use disorder. It was horrific and shocking to all of us. No one ever wants to get that call that, your son has left this earth until we meet again. And that's just such a profound and awful, awful loss. It's a huge hole and on my heart and in my family's hearts. And it really has, pretty much shattered our family from the loss of him.
But can you explain what were the events that led up to that? I mean, here he is, this star, this accomplished student, and had good grades, went on to college, was in a band, was musically talented and gifted. The youngest of 4 siblings, and what I would think was what we call normal. Normal family, as we can say, our normal family. But, the dynamics were such that you were a loving, caring,
involved.
Parents,
Maybe
family.
Too involved.
I don't know, too involved. I don't know. Can you be too involved with your kids as parents? I'm not sure. So what do you think led up to that?
So it's interesting that, I'm having this image of, yes, all these things are happening, and then what happened? And that was very much the response of his close friends and my family's close friends. Mm-hmm. It was that what happened moment. So he was not visibly ill, mm-hmm. like we would equate with other illnesses. So he started off, as every student does, with marijuana. Alcohol at party, marijuana use, and
so many of them
so many do, and so many continue into college experimenting, and that that's what happened with Michael. And we had open conversations about not to have that alter the outcome of your future and the the gift of having a higher education
life.
And fulfill your purpose. You had so much to offer. So from that kind of snowballed, and one after the next, and that led to an unknown use of fentanyl, which was new on the scene at that time. And so it was really, in the end, a fentanyl poisoning.
Right.
It wasn't something that he said, hey, I'd like to try that.
Well, we've talked about it, and our sons share a common thread in that respect. Same thing. I mean, my son ingested an oxycodone that was laced with fentanyl. So my narrative has changed that my son died of a fentanyl poisoning. My son was murdered because my son did not know that he was taking oxycodone laced with fentanyl. And unfortunately today, and I know this for a fact, the DEA has reported that 8 out of 10 black market medications are laced with fentanyl. It's just a known fact. And even like we've talked about, the marijuana, the cocaine, the methamphetamines, everything out there on the street doesn't have your name in a bottle. It's a good chance that it's got lacing of fentanyl on it. So it's out there, and it's very dangerous. And this is such an important point. And like you said, our sons, it was like a year. Nick had passed in 2018. So at that time, we didn't know. No. I was not aware of this fentanyl, and nor did I have, the equipment in my home to reverse an overdose. I didn't have Narcan in my home. So how did this impact, like you said, how did it impact your family? It just rocked your family to the core, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. There are no words to even describe the devastation that this caused our family.
So he was pretty much functioning. He was pretty much functioning. Like you said, he wasn't outwardly sick. He didn't have any evidence. You didn't see any outward evidence that he was using, illegal substances from your standpoint.
From my standpoint, right. He did, as I said, he was experimenting, and we could see that it was snowballing out of control. So he did have a rehab admission, trying to avoid the devastation that we ultimately, experienced. Something that I always, and I don't know how this is approached currently in rehabs, but we heard there, and I'm sure it was shared with the, inpatient, the patients there as well, that, it's typically, at that time, it was 7 admissions was the average amount before people actually were healed and they got it. 7 admissions is a very long time.
7 separate 28-day stays in an inpatient facility.
Right.
I understand.
Right.
And we both agreed
now,
that 28 days, it's nothing.
It's too short.
Right. We get that.
And, you know, the system, what unfortunately the criteria is the first admission is the shortest, and then it increases if you have coverage at that facility instead of the other way around, where I feel like it should be the longest length of stay and treatment to avoid subsequent admissions.
Right.
That seems to just be a more effective and efficient model.
And I think that's a topic for an entire another day. You know, absolutely. Right? The inadequacy of our inpatient recovery system. And then, you know, folks discharging, and where do they go? I mean, where do they go? If they don't have the means or the funding for a recovery house, so they're back to this, they could go back to the same old, same old.
Exactly.
Right?
Right. And
that's rehab, where rehab is relapse, rather, where relapse is much more prevalent. Yes,
absolutely, and ultimate overdosing and death.
Sure.
So Michael did then have a stay at a recovery home because I wanted to make that clear distinction that this is not going to happen in our household, that this is something that you want to be responsible for, because again, this is what we're taught, right?
Right.
But I didn't want to be an enabler with my husband and I, my family. And so he did live in a recovery home.
Right.
And that went very well.
Right.
And he actually, they, you know, were volunteering in their local church, and he was in the worship band, and you know, everything. He got a job. He was biking in brutal sub-degree temperatures to his job, and that was, you know, heart-wrenching as a parent.
Absolutely.
To not want to jump in and say, "I'll pick you up. I'll take you to work."
Right.
You know,
like we would other diseases.
Like we would. Exactly.
If they had cancer. I say it over and over and over again, Kiki. If they had cancer, they have diabetes, we're going to get their medicine, we're going to get them to treatment, we're going to, you know, lift them up. Because what do mothers do?
We
help their child heal.
And there it is again.
There it is again. So this word enable, you know, it's like, here you are trying, I mean, in my case, I'm trying to keep my family together, glued together with duct tape, for lack of a better word, trying to keep, you know, all these systems rolling, trying to keep the family together. But I can't enable I can't help my, you know, I mean, what do you do? It's just so complicated, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And we don't approach, like, as you say, and it's an excellent analogy to cancer. We don't just say, okay, here you are, you have cancer, go figure it out.
No,
what do we hear? No. It matters where you start.
Right.
Over and over you see the ads, right?
Sure.
And you have a whole team navigating
helping you
and staging your cancer and the treatments. And so that's what needs to happen in this. And I know this is
for another day. I know.
Conversation.
But as a result of Michael's passing, now, as many of us moms, you were motivated to start a nonprofit. So tell us about that.
So we decided that you know, the worst thing is this grief, but even worse than that was the wasted grief. And Michael was that kind of person where he would pick himself up and go help somebody else.
Yep.
Always.
Yep.
So we started the Waves to Wellness Foundation. The Waves harkens to his passion for the ocean, swimming, fishing, surfing, boating, and I guess also the musical wave part, if that sort of came out together nicely.
And the mission is?
The mission is to help families never have to experience the devastation that substance use disorder causes. That's pretty much the straightforward crux of that. You know, and of course there are many tangents from that. It's complicated, as we know.
Yes, it is. It certainly is.
One of our biggest programs is our recovery scholarship program, where we help people transition out of inpatient care into a safe recovery home that we have vetted.
Right.
That we would also help pay for any therapies that they would need. You know, transportation to their IOP.
Right.
Checking in with meetings, you know, the 12-step meetings, the NA or AA meetings. So that's the meat of what we do.
Because post inpatient stay, unless there's funding, again, another day, but unless there's funding, there's no funds available. Most people have burned all the bridges. You know, they don't have the financial means. They don't have a job. They have very little. And so what you're doing is helping them to continue with their care in a safe place with their peers who are also in the same place of their recovery journey.
Exactly.
Getting sober and staying sober.
And having,
having a peer support, which is just so vitally important.
So the point that I'm making is that scholarships are extremely, extremely important, you know, for individuals in recovery houses. Now, we are extremely, extremely fortunate and grateful to be able to work with Waves to Wellness. They are an excellent, excellent nonprofit organization. You know, Kiki and her family have been so kind to us. Our residents in the program are so extremely grateful, you know, to Kiki and her family, you know, and everything that they have done for our residents. So to date, Waves to Wellness has provided Unity Sober Living Homes with a total of 28 scholarships since February of 2022, which is absolutely amazing. And I am extremely happy to say that there are still 11 current residents in the program to this day that are still with Unity. So that goes to show that, you know, a lot of these people are doing extremely, extremely well. And I know for a fact that the funding that they received from Waves to Wellness has just relieved such a burden on them in terms of stress. It's absolutely ridiculous, you know.
So let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Radnor Township. You know, what got you involved? Of course, you know, from the tragedy, you have found ways to, you know, to steer that grief in a positive direction. So talk to me about now your position and what you've been doing with Radnor Township.
So I was nominated and appointed after, you know, the proper channels of interview and the agreement for appointment through the current board that was standing commissioners, Board of Education representatives. So I was appointed to the Radnor Board of Health, and I'm the first nurse to be there. So I offer a different perspective, more clinical based than you know, data driven and lab based to support that, you know, to sum it up a little bit. This is the first, you are the first nurse, correct, who's been appointed to the Board of Health. And your perspective is really, would you say it's concentrated on what's going on with substance use? I have brought that concern to the board, and we have had, which this is an unprecedented, you know, event that we are going to now sponsor. We've got approval to sponsor a Narcan and overdose reversal program that is happening soon, January 16th, and that had, you know, to go through the proper channels of approval. So that's exciting that we're training people in the awareness of substance use disorder and also how to act, what action to take, just as we would train people for CPR. So we'll also have Narcan for distribution for people to have in their purses, cars, homes.
So do you think that it's important, like let's say I said to you, well, I don't have a loved one that's abusing substance. What would your response to that be?
I would say that there may be some other person that you encounter, just as you would with a cardiac arrest. Perhaps friends, people in social situations, I've heard that has happened and people have acted on. Church, different school events you might encounter. Adults, we're talking about,
sure,
adults.
Right. I've also am excited that it's now being offered over the counter. That just happened over the summer, that Narcan is available over the counter, and that, hey, you could be a caregiver of an elderly person or anybody, any adult or anybody who is prescribed correctly pain medication, pain management medication that could be a legal substance, that's prescribed by a doctor. And you could say, well, yeah, I took my medicine 4 hours ago, and somebody gives you something, but you actually took it, in a shorter time period. There could be, most overdoses, unfortunately, do occur in the home. It's another thing that people don't understand. So I think it's really important that Narcan, it's in my purse. I carry it everywhere I go. It's in my vehicles. It's in my purse. And it's important that people understand they're protected by the Good Samaritan law.
Absolutely.
And that, to help somebody, you're not going to face any legal problems if the person indeed is not in an overdose. Narcan cannot hurt somebody.
No, that's right.
Even if they're not in an overdose.
Correct.
It could possibly save a life.
Yes.
And give that person another opportunity at recovery.
Right. Exactly. And to be able to pursue the proper treatment. That will be needed for substance use disorder, which is complex.
Absolutely. So tell me about what happened. Were you on the board when they were trying to, there was an outfit that was trying to open up that storefront close by? Were you on the board at that point?
Yes.
Not yet.
I was new on the board.
Okay. And tell me a little bit, because that was quite an eye-opening experience for the township, that this was something that was coming. And what did we know about it? Not very much.
Not very much.
No.
It was a very hush-hush type of thing at that Starbucks building, the vacant Starbucks building. And the concern was that there would be edible, they sell these edibles, CBD, that are legal.
Right.
But there are stipulations, and I don't know that those are followed in the transaction of that sale. So it wasn't just the CBD gummies that the concern was raised about. It was kratom.
Right.
And so because that building fell within a certain parameter of schools,
Right.
We were able to obstruct that from opening.
That was great. Well, kudos to you and the board for going out and saying, hold on a second, this just isn't going to fly in our area here. And I really think that was a really big feather in the cap for you, the board members, and those in the community who just stood up and said, not here.
We're not
having it. And awareness, like the kratom and the gummies and the CBD. There are these little, these little nuances in this little gray area that these retailers can get away with. But again, here we are in the gateway. It's another gateway situation. And we have to be aware of what's going on around us.
Right.
So
exactly.
I think that's fabulous. So unfortunately, we are at the closure of our talk here. It's so fast. But again, if people wanted to find out about your nonprofit, how would they access information?
They would go to wavestowellness.org. We have that website, as well as the Waves to Wellness Facebook page, Facebook group. So that's where a lot of our photos of our programs are shown.
Okay, people can learn more and donate and learn more about what you're doing.
Yes, absolutely.
In the community,
There is a donation link where people can choose to support someone who is having that recovery scholarship, and that those funds would be
wonderful.
Would be solely for that purpose.
That's great. Well, I can't thank you enough for joining us today and enlightening us about what's going on in Radnor and this wonderful event that's taking place. So thank you again. And thank you for joining us for this important discussion. I hope you have learned more about how illegal substances are impacting our community and why you need to be prepared in the event of an accidental overdose. It can happen in your home or on the streets where you live. As we have illustrated, this can and does happen to anyone. Unfortunately, no one is immune from the grips of addiction, or that even one pill can kill. I strongly hope you will consider attending the Overdose Reversal Training event taking place on Tuesday, January 16th at 6:30 at the Radnor Township building located at 301 Ivan Avenue in Radnor. And if you or a loved one needs help or would like to donate, please visit us anytime at angelsagainstaddiction.org. Remember, you are not alone. I believe together we can help save lives. Thank you.